Welcome back. In this section, we shift our focus to when it's time to seek assistance and what effective support looks like for law enforcement and corrections professionals. We will be discussing the risks of self-medicating and engaging in destructive coping behaviors. What peer support truly means in the context of public safety. We will also compare and contrast peer support and counseling to highlight the unique roles each plays. So let's dive in. Reaching out for help or guidance is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it reflects strength, self-awareness, and a commitment to personal and professional health. In the high-stress environment of law enforcement and corrections, acknowledging that you need support is a critical step toward resilience. There are several signs that it might be time to seek assistance. If you find yourself overwhelmed by situations at work, at home, or even during training, it's important to recognize that you don't have to face these challenges alone. Similarly, if you're experiencing intense feelings of discomfort, stress, or confusion that make it hard to function day to day, it's a good time to reach out for help. If significant symptoms such as anxiety, sadness, irritability, or difficulty sleeping persist for more than 6 weeks, it's essential to get the support you need to heal and move forward. Research consistently shows that law enforcement and corrections staff are at higher risk of self-medicating and engaging in destructive coping behaviors, including substance abuse, alcohol misuse, and even domestic violence, often as a response to cumulative trauma and occupational stress. The cultural stigma around asking for help, fear of being perceived as weak, and concerns about career consequences often push officers to seek self-medication as an alternative. Alcohol misuse is significantly higher among police officers compared to the general population. One study by Violanti et al. Found that about 25% of officers reported binge drinking in the past month, compared to about 17% in the general population. A FBI law enforcement bulletin reports that 20 to 25% of police officers have serious alcohol problems, often linked to trauma exposure and stress. Correctional staff also exhibit high rates of alcohol and substance misuse, with a study by Denhoff and Spinaris showing that 50% of corrections officers reported drinking to cope with work-related stress. These behaviors can initially feel like a release, but often worsen mental health symptoms like depression and anxiety, creating a cycle of dependence and distress. Exposure to repeated trauma, combined with hypervigilance and emotional suppression, can also contribute to aggression and domestic violence. Research by Johnson et al. Shows that law enforcement officers are at increased risk of domestic violence perpetration compared to the general population. The National Center for Women in Policing has reported that at least 40% of police officer families experience domestic violence, compared to about 10% in the general population. According to Spinaris et al., although reliable data for corrections staff is more limited, studies show that high occupational stress and trauma exposure correlate with higher rates of aggression, irritability, and relationship problems. No one else can fully work through the aftermath of a critical incident for you, but you don't have to face it alone. It's important to keep an open mind and recognize that healing is a process, one that can be made easier with the support of those around you. Allow your family, friends, and peers to help when you need it. Sometimes the people who care about you can see changes in your mood, behavior, or attitude that you might overlook. Trust their observations and listen when they express concern. If you find yourself stuck, unable to move past the trauma, or if you simply don't feel like yourself, don't hesitate to seek professional assistance. Mental health professionals are trained to help you work through these challenges, and reaching out is a sign of strength, not weakness. Above all, don't ignore those who care about you. The people who love and respect you want to help you navigate the difficult road to recovery, and accepting their support is an essential part of getting back on track. Now that we've explored when to seek assistance, especially in recognizing the risks of self-medication, aggression, and other destructive coping behaviors, It's clear that reaching out for help is an essential part of maintaining mental health in high-stress professions. We also emphasized that peer support can be a vital resource when dealing with the challenges of trauma and stress. But what is peer support, and what does it actually look like? Peer support is a concept that involves trained peers providing emotional and practical support to one another. In the context of law enforcement and corrections, peer supporters are fellow officers who have been trained in specific techniques for helping colleagues process difficult emotions and experiences. This can range from providing an ear to listen after a tough call to facilitating access to mental health resources when needed. In addition, officers may feel more comfortable seeking help for personal or professional stressors by utilizing peers who understand what they're going through firsthand. Let's watch a video and hear from actual first responders about peer support.
My name is Chris Malin. I'm a detective sergeant with the Brookline Police Department. I've been a Brookline police officer for 27 years.
My name is Derek Harrington. I'm a police sergeant in the patrol division at Medway Police Department.
Police officers regularly respond to calls involving a wide span of violent incidents of people with serious injuries, incidents of abuse, domestic violence. Unfortunately, they respond to calls of suicide, drug overdoses, and any number of traumatic incidents that are probably the worst day of other people's lives.
First responders see a multitude of incidents, and when they see something tragic, especially for the first time, it can be hard for them.
Being routinely exposed to traumatic events can have an effect on somebody's personal life, their professional life, their demeanor, and it can make it difficult for them to live their lives fully, whether that's as a productive police officer or a good parent, a good spouse. That necessitates the need to have some peer-based resources available.
We need to make sure that our people are taken care of, and their concerns and their feelings and emotions and all the things are validated and dealt with. And that's where peer support team comes in.
So when we provide support to officers that we work with, it can happen in different ways. Sometimes a person will approach you. Oftentimes it's something that myself or another team member might recognize, or it could be something that one of these people's coworkers bring to our attention, and they're not comfortable approaching them.
A situation where I received peer support was I was notified while on vacation that my brother had taken his own life. I just felt a sense of emptiness, and I had trouble focusing, eating, sleeping. I just was distracted. Finally, it hit me that I was not in a good place, and not only was I not safe for myself on this job, I was not safe for my fellow officers. And I reached out to my lieutenant to get some help, and he put me in touch with an officer out of a peer support unit. And this officer was very supportive, was able to listen to me, validate my feelings, my emotions, and what I was going through, and he was able to get me back on a path where I could be a productive and successful officer.
Peer support programs make that awkward step of reaching out to someone for help a little less awkward because they're speaking to a peer. Having a peer that they know they can turn to makes it more likely that they will seek out the help.
I believe in peer support because peer support is an extension of what we do as first responders. We're supporting our peers in the community. And if we can't do it within our four walls and be able to support our brother and sister, how are we going to effectively support them out on the street?
I think on a big picture, it recognizes that culturally, as a profession, we're changing. We're recognizing things that we should have recognized decades ago. And I think that's a good thing. And I think peer support plays a big role in that, because it makes it more accessible for officers to get the assistance they may need, and peer support can be sort of the gateway and the conduit to that help.
These programs can help prevent a potential suicide of an officer. If an officer is struggling and just feels like that he or she has no other option, these programs are 24/7. Officers are willing to come out at any time because they have a duty to the profession and to help their brother and sister get to a better place.
When we check in with somebody, there's no stigma attached to it. I had an officer last week actually mention when a number of people checked in with them after a suicide, that they said they appreciated the fact that so many people had checked in, and they also appreciated the fact that now it was accepted that they did that. and that was common. And I think that's a good sign that we're changing the way we look at a lot of these situations with our officers and addressing it in a more healthy way.
Ultimately, you know, what these programs are for, they're there for the officer and their families, because this is a hard career, this is a hard job to do, and we need as much support as we can get.
You owe it to yourself and your family to live the best possible life that you can. And if being a police officer is making it difficult to accomplish that goal, peer support programs are there to make that accomplishment a little bit easier.
Many law enforcement and corrections officers historically have had a negative view of counseling, and that perception can influence their willingness to participate in peer support programs, especially when peer support is misunderstood as a form of traditional counseling. Officers often conflate peer support with counseling, particularly if the program isn't clearly defined, or if peer supporters are seen as extensions of the department. If the distinction between peer support and formal therapy isn't communicated effectively, officers may avoid peer support altogether out of the same fears and stigma that surround traditional counseling. Peer support is not counseling because it is not clinical in nature. Peer support focuses on empathy, shared experience, and connection, not diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. It's designed to provide emotional support and practical encouragement from someone who has been there, rather than to engage in psychological evaluation or therapeutic techniques. In plain terms, peer support is, "I've been through something similar, let's talk. You're not alone." Counseling is, "Let's work together clinically to treat your mental health symptoms." Knowing the difference helps officers and staff use each resource effectively, getting the right help at the right time, without fear or confusion. The mission of peer support is to offer timely, empathetic support to officers, staff, and their families, both through everyday stress and during or after critical or traumatic incidents. It fills a vital role that other services often cannot reach, providing a confidential, inside-the-family connection that is non-clinical and non-punitive. Its core components include providing emotional and psychological support during personal or work-related stress, offering debriefing and resource navigation following duty-related critical events, serving as a bridge to professional help, recognizing when more expert intervention is needed, and maintaining a confidential and trusted environment, fostering resilience, coping, recovery, and ensuring interactions are private unless safety or legal concerns arise. The mission of peer support is live, personal, and practical. It ensures officers receive immediate, confidential, and culturally aware support in challenging moments, reinforcing their resilience and readiness. In a profession where strength often means silence, peer support offers connection without judgment and a path to healing when it's needed most. As we prepare to close, let's recap. In this section, we covered when it's time to seek assistance and what effective support looks like for law enforcement and corrections professionals. We discussed the risks of self-medicating and engaging in destructive coping behaviors, what peer support truly means in the context of public safety, and we compared and contrasted peer support and counseling to highlight the unique roles each plays. In the next section, we'll turn our attention to the benefits of peer support in law enforcement and corrections, exploring how these programs can improve emotional health, strengthen morale, and help agencies build a more resilient workforce. We'll also discuss how individuals recover from traumatic stress, emphasizing practical steps, support strategies, and the importance of early intervention. Finally, we'll take a closer look at Missouri's peer support law, which provides important legal protections for officers who participate in peer support programs.